what are my values? What really is important? And a lot of people, they get what they want, and then they have to kind of go back and say, well, hey, well, what really, what am I creating? What was all this for? And so I think
Yeah.
it is very spiritual. It is a very spiritual, like, is God, what does God have a plan for all this, or what's my purpose, and all those things, So I think it all ties together.
Yeah. Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we welcome Bronson Hill. Bronson and I are going to talk about the strategies that he's learned from over 2,500 interviews with multimillionaires and how you can use these skills and lessons that he's learned to your advantage to do the same. We're also going to talk about the 2 books he's written and his new book, Rich Brain, which is about to come out. Join us for a fun conversation today with Bronson Hill. Bronson, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, excited to be here. Love talking real estate and next level everything in your life.
Absolutely, man. We're gonna talk about all things money, but really how to take your mindset, your wealth to the next level. But I know you and I share some commonalities in our history here. I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit more about your background as well.
Yeah, so like you, I was medical sales for 10 years. I did it, and I had enough after 10 years. I said I wanted to, instead of working for somebody else and hustling for them, I thought, man, I want to create more time freedom for myself. And so even though I was making a good income, over 200,000 a year, working 30 hours a week, I didn't have control of my time. I couldn't take the vacations that I wanted to. And so not just that, but to be able to create space and time and memories with family. And so I started to learn about real estate, discover this thing called syndication, was able to get started. And I realized there's some transferable skills of being able to be in sales. And also, I didn't realize raising capital is a sales role. So now, about 5 years later, raised about $45 million for real estate, different businesses. We really do, cash flow appreciation or tax benefits in different sorts of assets.
Yeah, no, I love it. And yeah, I think, having that background like we do in med device, but really, being a high paid professional that's, very technical, it's very exciting. I don't know about you, but I was like so thrilled to get the opportunity, and I worked my tail off, over the course of like 5 years. And finally I was like, I'm making great money. And I used to tell the reps I trained, Bronson, I say, this is the one of the only careers where as soon as you make it, your next question that you say is, how long do I have to do this? Like, when can I get out of this? Because it feels like,
Yeah.
you're on this just, true rat race where, every day you get up and it's like, go, 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 go. And you do
Yeah.
well, but man, it feels like you're just kind of like a little piece of your soul gets chipped away every day.
It's funny. I had about 2 months. It scared me to death to leave a job. Like my family's in education. Everybody's like, oh, why would you leave your great job? And it really does become the golden
Yeah.
handcuffs where you just
Yeah.
can't leave. You get in a lifestyle and you get whatever. And I remember it was about 2 months after I left. I had some entrepreneur friends that I got in touch with, and they were just like almost without exception, they're like, you should leave your job pretty much as soon as possible. And they're like, if it doesn't work, you could always go back. And it was like in my mind, I just didn't say, oh, I could always go back. But I was sitting right at this desk here. And what was going, I was doing some work for real estate and things I was doing, and I was no longer in medical sales. And what came to mind was this, imagining a call from my manager saying, "Oh, how many more of these are you going to sell this month?" And what came out of my mouth was, "Thank God I'm not doing that job anymore." Right. So like, it's
Yeah.
just amazing. And then now, like this year, recording this late 2024, I've traveled 6 times internationally this year. Went to Nepal and
Amazing.
India. I just got back from Portugal a week ago. And so just creating
Wow.
these adventures and experiences, and also writing music and writing a book, writing books. And so like being able to have that space and time. And it's unfortunate that most people are stuck in jobs that they're not engaged with. It's the money's good, it's easy, but it's not, you're not learning in the same way. You don't have the
Yeah.
flexibility. And so I think it's what you're trying to create too, is it possible to work less and make more money passively? And like Warren Buffett says, money while you
Yeah.
sleep, right? That's what I think we all want.
Absolutely. So, yeah, let's dive into that a little bit, because I was just having a conversation with a friend. He's actually a parent of one of my son's lacrosse teammates, and he's an asset manager in the real estate space. He was with kind of a startup, and they came to him a couple months ago and said, "Hey, you know, a consulting company came in, said, hey, we're basically doing away with your role. We're going to restructure and try to save
Mm.
money through this merger." And he said, I feel kind of lucky that I'm getting this opportunity to kind of step back and look at my life. And for me, Bronson, I'm curious about like kind of when you came to this realization. I always wanted that freedom, but I always like that excitement, of
Yeah.
going to work. It's very challenging roles, right? And it's really cool, you get to work with literal geniuses, right? These super intelligent, super skilled individuals, these surgeons. But man, when you're racing back from the hospital with the balloons in the back of your car to make it to your son's, fifth birthday, because you're the last one there,
Yeah.
or you can't be there for Mother's Day, like I had with my wife, and these moments, I said, okay, like I gotta find a way. And fortunately, I started buying real estate early,
Yeah.
um, and my moment, we were doing syndication. We had already syndicated some deals. And my son and I were flying back actually from Salt Lake City.
Mm.
And he looked at me, he's like, "Man, Dad, I wish we could do more of this." And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, why am I not doing more of this?
Yeah.
When did that kind of moment hit you, or when did you come up with the plan to really be able to exit, that those golden handcuffs, as you were saying?
Yeah, there was a decision that was made. I had started doing some syndication. I wanted to get into really managing, time and having more creative opportunities. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to do it.
Yeah,
And of course, entrepreneurship is a lot of up and downs. There's
yeah,
challenges with it. It's great. Of course, there's just things that come up. But I think there was a decision that I made that I started saying, what is the life I want to live? And I actually went
yeah,
to an event that was kind of a goals event, and it was like, well, within 3 years, I want to be out of this job, and I want to have
right,
replaced my living expenses with passive income, which I think is the first level
yeah,
of financial freedom, right? That's the base one.
yep,
Just if you cover that, you're good. It doesn't
yep,
you don't necessarily have to replace your income,
yeah,
but if you replace your living expenses, you're in a good spot. So for me, it was only like, for me, 5 or 6K a month. It wasn't that
yep,
lofty. I was like, I
yeah,
can do that. I can figure that out. And it was it when I was able to do it. I was like, oh, I feel like I'm free, and just something changed. So, for me, I think it's Tony Robbins. I'm a big personal development guy, and you
yeah,
keep and a lot of people I talk to do stuff like what you and I do. It's just keeping the goal in front of you
yes,
continually, reading it every day, whatever. I read my goals every morning and I go through, and I don't always hit all my goals, but I make progress on almost all of them. So keeping the goal in front of you and then continually changing your approach as you get there. So it was like, oh, I tried that. I tried single family. It didn't really work, right? It wasn't really getting me where I wanted to go. It would have taken me a lot longer. And so I said, well, let's try this syndication thing. That sounds crazy, but let's try it. And so then it opened up and just a lot more to be able to develop. So I think, yeah, for me, it was really about creating the time freedom as well as doing the things that I'm passionate about. Because for me,
yeah,
the role has been, I've done different medical sales jobs, and of course, professionals can relate to for a while, after, a year or two, you kind of know the job, the people. Kind of
yeah,
like the growth. I think it's just harder to be in a place where you're continually growing. Maybe some people's work is
yeah,
just continually a lot of growth, but I just love learning. And so I love being in a place where it's like learning something, learning a new asset, and learning this. And it's like
yeah.
I'm in a place where I'm continually learning new things, and it's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. And yeah, it is interesting. Like, I remember that, you're like, I can just roll out of bed and go into this complex surgery. And I know it's going to go well
Yeah,
because I've done it 1,000 times
totally.
before. And I think a lot of people, get to that point where they're, I said, hey, if you're happy going to your job 3 out of 5 days, like that's pretty good, like sometimes, you've
Yeah,
got a young daughter. I've got two young sons. I'm not going to say that 7 days a week that my boys are awesome kids, but if we get 4 or 5 good days out of seven, like that's a really good week,
yeah,
it's like, all
yeah,
right, this is going good. Um, yeah. So, I guess, that you go to that event, and I love that 3 year time period. That's what we talk to our coaching clients about, like that 3 year vision. Like what, how can that happen? I think a lot of people, Bronson, they don't know where to start, and I think that's a great place to start. So you say, okay, get that vision in your head, put it down, get it crystal clear. I just got you'll appreciate this. I got an email last week from a coaching client, and he's also in the medical device field, and it was like pulling teeth to get him to get that vision down. And he's like, "Well, Chris, I'm doing this, I'm doing that." I'm like, "I know." I was like, "But this is really important. Like, I can't stress it enough. I know it might seem kind of
yeah,
silly or woo woo. I know Tony Robbins is big on this, because I did this process with him,
yeah,
and he did it well. He sends me this email, Bronson, and he goes, "These are all the things I've accomplished." And
yeah,
then at the end of the email, he goes, "And I've got to thank you because you pushed me to put that vision in place, to
yeah,
get my mind right." He goes, "In everything that I just listed out, Chris, I had in that 3 year vision, and it's
Yeah.
only been 2 years.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about, you put that vision together. Talk a little bit about some of the other tools that you use to get your mind right, and
Yeah.
specifically when, when things aren't always going well. Like, how do you kind of get yourself back on track?
Yeah, well, I talk about this in my book, Fire
Yeah,
Yourself Behind Me. The subtitle
yeah,
is Replace Your Working Income in 3 years or Less. And so that's become an
yeah,
Amazon bestseller, which is awesome. But it basically is just
yeah,
the process of like where I'm at from where I go. And I went to an event a few years ago. It's called Create Your Future, and I actually do recreate this event every year for myself, just by myself. And I'll go through and it's like getting to a place of figuring out what's really important. Like
yeah.
if I had 1 year to live, like what would be the things that really mattered? What would be the things that I
Right,
would do? And just really getting a little more reflective of a place because life has this way, and I know you probably realize this too. You might be a little younger than I am, but it just like every single year, like the time this phenomenon happens, and it says as you get older, the years go quicker. And I think it's
yeah,
just so
yeah,
true that just the time goes, kids grow, everything
yeah,
like everything happens very quickly.
yeah,
And so like if you just in your mind, as somebody listening, you fast forward 5 years or 10 years, you can kind of imagine based on what you're doing right now what the results you're going to get
yeah,
unless you win the lottery or crazy. Like it's going to be pretty predictable generally.
yeah.
But so if you want to have something change, you've got to be very, very intentional about the
Yes,
words that you're using, the images that you're creating for yourself, what you're imagining for yourself, because it's like the things that we're creating, we're saying, we're doing, those are the things we're becoming. And so I have a whole morning routine where I go through, I read my goals each morning. I have usually about 10 or 12 big goals per. I read them every single morning. I go through my values, my mission statement. I go through some stuff about who I am. This is how I want to. This is how I show up. This is the person that I am, and I create these things really through my words, through my imagery, and over time, I've been just floored that these things have happened. I mean, it's just amazing. Like I've raised $45 million. That's I never thought that would happen, right? But I was able to leave my job and write my second book now. So it's
yeah,
like these things can be created through visualization. And actually, I was talking about my next book's called Rich Brain. So it's Rich Brain, how the
yeah,
wealthy change their brain to change their bank account. So this actually comes
yeah.
from 2,500 interviews I've had with millionaires. So typically average net worth of
Amazing.
at least 2 million. And
Yeah,
most people have, they're very wealthy. They have this practice of really creating and really, I call it worthiness, right? Sometimes we just feel like we're not worthy of, like we kind of revert back to wherever we feel like we should. The $100,000 person a year finds a way to make
mm,
100K versus somebody who's, a million
yeah.
will find like a million. And so it's this, if you want to
Yeah.
move up in that, you've got to change the way you see yourself. And there's some mindset principles and actions that you can do to help change that.
I love that. We're gonna dive into Rich Brain because it's going to be coming out here shortly here
Yes.
in the new year, which is why we were excited to have you on as the first show of 2025. But I love what you said, Bronson. Like, when I was we are talking about a little bit about our athletic endeavors before we started recording today. And when I was 18, I'll never forget, I first read about sports psychology and how, your brain doesn't really know the difference between what you conjure in your mind and what is reality. And Michael Phelps talks about this, how he'd visualize himself winning, and when his goggles filled up with water, he was able to know exactly how many strokes he needed to take, exactly where the wall was, and it didn't even matter that he couldn't see because he'd done it so many times in his
Yeah.
head. We did the same thing. If you're a doctor and you're listening, or you're a medical device rep and you're listening, you stand in front of a camera and you get recorded as you do a presentation, or you do a surgery alongside of a surgeon over and over and over again. So these are normal things that occur out in the professional world. Yet people think it's kind of silly to, as we were talking about the coaching client that didn't want to write his vision down, or they might be listening to you and say, "Oh, that's silly that you do that." But Jim Carrey wrote the $10 million check to himself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned you interviewed 2,500 people, and I agree with you. More often than not, when I'm talking to people that are successful that have made that jump, they do the silly things, right?
Yeah.
That seems silly to everybody else, but it's like the old Head and Shoulders commercial. Well, you don't have dandruff. Yeah, because I do the work, right? You do the work
Yeah.
and the outcome comes. So you talk about putting your vision together. You talk about reviewing it every day and doing that.
Yeah.
What other tools have you learned or do you personally use to help move forward and hit those life
Yeah,
goals.
yeah. I just want to reiterate something you said
Yeah,
because it really struck a chord with me too. It really surprised me. It's interesting when you do research, you learn something, and I think it should surprise you. If you already know what it's going to say, it's like, well, what are you
yeah,
even doing this for? But what
yeah,
surprised me is that the highly successful people, I'm talking like people 10 to 40 million net worth or, over five, like almost every single one had some practice in place where they were really
yeah,
intentionally doing this. And there was
yeah,
affirmations, there were vision boards, there were all kinds of things, and these
yeah,
things would become a reality.
yeah,
And so it's just amazing how that stuff creates. One practice that I found that is useful in this, and it's something we can all relate to because it's something that from a young age we talk to ourselves, right? So something
yeah,
happens when we're a kid, and like we fall down in front of and their classmates laugh. We say, "Oh, I'm so stupid," or whatever. We have this self-talk very
yeah,
naturally negative. We have this negative kind of thing we don't like, kind of the way we look, the way we show up, the way we talk, and there's this negative bias, and a lot of it comes from scientists say it's from a survival. We look for the negative because those
mm,
are threats, right? And so when we were
yeah,
being chased by a bear or a lion, like you had to, if you didn't pay attention, like you'd die. So like there's this
yeah.
reason, but we don't have lions and bears chasing us in our culture mostly, unless you live in somewhere in the backwoods maybe. But anyway, there's a practice that I found
We're in
that is
Texas.
yeah, or in Texas, exactly, maybe, is super helpful to help change the way that we see ourselves. And again, it comes to
Yeah,
this idea of wealth worthiness. And really, I call it whisperings. And it's the idea of it's not just like an affirmation is standing in front of the mirror and saying things about
yeah,
yourself, and this it's part of it. But things that we whisper to ourselves when something bad happens, or
mm,
like for example, let's say I'm single and I see a beautiful woman across the room and I want to go say hello. But what goes through my mind, and I say to myself, is, "Oh, she's not going to like you anyway. You're not good looking, whatever." Like, how's that conversation going to go? Right? I'm going to walk in with this already kind of self-defeating talk, and I go in.
mm,
And so, we see this in personal development. We've seen it. Okay, that may affect that relationship. I may not show up in the way I want to show up, but it also affects the way we approach business deals, or we approach
yeah,
career, or we approach where we want to be in the future. So it's like there's a way we can change that dialogue through creating these whisperings that are like, for one example of this is personal example. I went through a divorce, unfortunately, about 8 years ago,
mm,
and I came through this, and I just felt like when I was through, man, I just felt no sense of self worth. Like I just felt like no
mm,
sense of self confidence. So I created with my words. I created the statement like I show up, and I own the room with the confidence and the authority of a king, right? And it's bold to say that on a
So
podcast, but
say
like
that.
I
So say that one more time, just so yeah.
yeah.
Slow it down. Just say that
So
one more time.
so I
Yeah.
Bronson, I show up with the confidence. I own the room with the confidence and the authority of a king. And so I
Mm,
say that, take that into my spirit, and I take that in my mind and everything. There's things we can say,
yeah.
but we don't actually feel them. And so that's why like people will say things and like it doesn't feel authentic. But over time, the more
Right.
you do this, the more you take it in,
Yeah.
you actually generate it. And this is why
Yeah.
this is how people do impossible things, Chris. Those like
Yeah.
Elon Musk will say, we're going to Mars, whatever. Well, it's because he's
Yeah.
incorporated that vision into who he is. And so this is how like people's lives really change as they take information they know to be true or they want to be true, and they meditate it on it in such a way, and they speak it, and it's in front of them, and then it starts to come from within. And it's kind of magical when it happens for the first time. But then when I show up in a place and I'm like, man, I do own the room. I do feel this way. I do feel this confidence. It's amazing. So I think that's the
Yeah.
the biggest, most powerful thing I think I learned from all these interviews.
I love that. And it's, I think inherently we know this. Like when we hear it and we feel it and we see it, we know that, but we don't always believe that it can actually happen. When I was racing, I had my trainer down in the basement, and I had a separate AC unit, a big fan down there, and I had like my training vision board. So I had like
Yeah.
pictures of me winning and some of my heroes at the time with like their arms up, and I had these sayings like I can do anything for a minute. So like when things were really tough, I do that.
Yeah.
Or I climb like a champion, light as a feather. So I had these sayings and these meditations that I'd listened to. And I started doing that, for money as well as we got older. And again, I think, if you're an athlete and you're listening, you've done these things. You picture yourself when you're a kid hitting the baseball over the fence, or raising your arms in triumph. So as you're saying, Bronson, like these are some fantastic things that you can do if you're out there. And it's not just it's not silly, just because we're not used to doing them. These things that you're talking about, these are things that are common. I've seen the same thing with these people that have changed their lives or become truly successful. Are you a high income business owner or professional earning 200,000, 300,000 or even more a year, but still feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck? Are you comfortable working until you're 65 or 70 to retire? Or do you want to achieve financial independence and live life on your own terms? You could join myself and Matt Four and learn how we both became financially independent in our early 30s. We will teach you how to make, keep, and grow your money, teaching you strategies to maximize your earnings, keep your income that you've earned through tax strategy and legal structures, and ultimately teach you how to grow it by determining your personal investing strategy, as well as teach you how to analyze investments so you can grow your passive income to the point to live life on your own terms. Our coaching clients reliably do this in 7 years or less. To learn more, check out our coaching program at nextlevelincome.com/coaching. That's nextlevelincome.com/coaching.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. Talk about this
Yeah.
in Rich Brain. A lot of people, their
Yeah.
plan to be wealthy is like,
Yeah.
have their rich uncle die or win the lottery. And it's just like these are not only they're not likely, but it's not
Yeah.
sustainable. Like you have to
Yeah.
become the person. Robert Kiyosaki talks about be, do, have, right? So it's the idea that
Yes.
like
Yeah.
you don't just have this. Everybody wants to have the stuff, but in order to actually do it the right way, you have to become that person who's
Yes.
wealthy, which is not
Yeah.
just having stuff. It's the person who responds this way. You
Yeah.
do the things that they do, and then you have the stuff. And I wish it
That's
was
right.
another way. You just kind of inherit it, but like
Yeah.
but most people that win the lottery only like I think it was like 11% or 15% are actually happier after they won the lottery,
Right.
like years later
Yeah.
than if they hadn't. It becomes a real
Yeah.
challenge for them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the
Yeah.
mindset huge.
Yeah. You said be do have. Is that right?
Be, do,
Robert
have. Yeah,
Kiyosaki. Be
become the
do have.
person,
Yeah.
do the actions, have the stuff. It's
Yeah.
got to be that order.
Yeah. I love it. And if you haven't yet, you like this book. It's called The Rise of Superman. So it's
Okay.
about it's written by Stephen Kotler, and he's got a little video on YouTube. It's several years old now. At this point, it came out about 10 years ago. The Rise of Superman. But if you're listening, what's really cool is um, uh, Stephen Kotler talks about in the book how sports really changed. And he talks about the moment they changed was when the GoPro Hero camera came out.
Huh.
And the reason is that when people would, like, say, jump a canyon on their skateboard, then they would show it. And just like the 4 minute mile, it became believable by other people. And what he was explaining was because we can see this thing actually occurring in the world, then we believe that it's possible in our mind. And this exponential growth rate of success and these accomplishments began to happen in extreme sports specifically.
Yeah.
He talks about a guy that fell. He was base jumping. He fell into this cave, like vertical
Oh,
cave. I forget where it was. It was in Central America, I think. And he said time slowed down. He was actually able to see the rope as he was falling and grab it with his hands, and he caught the rope like in mid fall. These things that are superhuman events, or being able to kind of
yeah.
visualize the path of a climb that had never occurred before. So again, it's if you don't believe what Bronson and I are telling you, check out of the rise of Superman. It's really wild, some of these stories, and you start to really see these things that have occurred that you can go watch on YouTube or see in the world, and have them happen. I want to transition a little bit, Bronson. So um, I think two things. One, I want to talk about some tips that you have for people, that have faced a setback, like you're just talking about, going through a challenging point in your life, and then also, those, when you hit plateaus, like how do you stay motivated? So you're about to finish your second book, which is amazing. I know how hard it is. People know. I hope if you're listening, we got our book at nextlevelincome.com. You can get a free copy. We've got some other stuff there as well for you. But Bronson, you have the freedom, you have the ability to travel. You can spend, time with your daughter, and be a great dad. Why not just sit back a little bit and enjoy life? How do you stay motivated when you've already hit, these things that you visualized several years ago, and they're here now?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a question I ask people. I was like, if you
Yeah,
had $1 billion, like, what would you do? And I don't have
yeah,
$1 billion, but
yeah,
if you did, what would you do? And I just think like I'd be doing the same thing that I'm doing now because
yeah,
I'm able to really help people in a way that I think really significantly changes their lives. And
yeah.
I think income, to me, it's interesting. Part of my background as well, I was a youth pastor for 4 or 5 years. So I'd help people,
Wow, yeah,
spiritual matters and things.
yeah,
And people say, oh, you went to that to medical sales and now this. And I'm like, well, it's kind of all this. You're helping people. It's just,
right.
and money is like, it's never been to me about the yachts and the Mai Tai lifestyle,
Mm,
right? It's never been about that. It's been about, well, how can I impact the world. It gives you more
Yeah.
freedom to do more things. And
Yes.
also, big why is to really end modern day human slavery in the world. And there's 20 to 40
Mm.
million human slaves in the world today. So it's a big why for me that
Wow.
I'm still getting my head around what it looks like and
Yeah.
how to help in that cause. But
Yeah.
um, so I think that, what's way more powerful than freedom, just for the sake of freedom, is that its significance, its legacy. Watch people that go through, and we've
Yeah.
seen many people. We have a mastermind too called the Wealth Forum that's for high net worth individuals for networking education, and both people that kind of have everything
Yeah.
really becomes what's my legacy? What are my kids? Can I bring my kids into this? What's the impact
Yeah.
I'm making in the world? How do I want to give back? And it's a
Yeah.
great place to be. It's a great aspirational place. So long as we just want to
Yeah.
get out of the job or get out of the thing, whatever. But then it
Yeah.
becomes like, well, no, what are my values? What really is important? And a lot of people they get what they want, and then they have to kind of go back and say, well, hey, well, what really what am I creating? What was all this for? And so I think it
Yeah.
is very spiritual. It is a very spiritual, like does God have a plan for all this, or what's my purpose, and all those things. So
Yeah.
it all ties together.
Yeah. No, I love that. And actually my youth pastor, youth minister, she married my wife and I. So
Okay.
which is
Wow.
really really cool. So we have some great memories from her. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Like having a goal that's bigger than yourself, like you mentioned, ending modern slavery. So you said 20 to 40 million. Is it true that there are more slaves today? I guess the population's so big. There are more slaves today than at any time in history. Is that true?
It's actually true, yeah, and they don't know exactly how
Wow.
many, but they think about
Yeah.
half of them are actually in the country of India. And there's this labor
Oh,
slavery
really?
thing that like there are
Mm.
literally people that are like, yeah, I'm working at this brick factory like as a slave, or basically as a
Yeah.
slave because my grandfather took a loan. Like it's literally like there's a lot of corruption in these
Wow.
areas too, and so it's
Wow.
just stuff that's for us to
Yeah.
real,
Mm.
even in India, not everybody know, people like living a mile away don't really know what's going on, that this is
Mm.
happening, and just some of the
Yeah.
stories are so sad.
Yeah.
It's going on, for generations. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's again, we hear stories, with the border in Africa with the cobalt mines
Yeah.
and those sorts of things with India. But yeah, so I love the size of that goal, and it's one of those things where, like Elon, you were mentioning, billionaires and Elon Musk, I'm going to go to Mars. He's got this his whole drive, which you really understand if you watch the way he operates with Tesla, with now X, as he bought Twitter, even with how he got involved in politics, is he wants to perpetuate humanity and do these
Yeah.
things, and it's like, how do you get, man, that's like an unlimited supply of energy, when you do this. You've given us a lot of tips, from your first book, some from your second book. Um, let's talk a little bit about what else people will learn from Rich Brain Bronson.
Yeah. So, really, I think I talked about just the common things people believe about finances, and that people that are highly successful, they just have very different views around what wealth is, how to create it. And, there's the mindset. There's the biggest thing is getting your wealth worthiness there, where you feel like, hey, I'm actually, some people
Self-worthiness.
get it over time, where they're
Yeah.
kind of
So
have
what
one
is
success to another. Yeah.
wealth worthiness? I think I know what
Yeah.
that is, but just
Yeah. Yeah.
describe
I'll
that
explain.
for the listeners. Yeah.
Yeah. So wealth worthiness is really that kind of internal barometer of what we feel we deserve. And so I
Yeah.
mentioned it before, the idea that, the $100,000 person making $100,000, you kind of finds a way to make 100,000, but making a million or 2 million,
Yeah.
they'll find a way to do that.
Yeah.
And you see that those in the medical field or professionally, you find people that make a lot more money or 10 times the amount of money as someone else.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to a belief that we have about ourselves. And
Yeah.
so once you become aware of that, you can change it. And so
Yeah.
some people they grow over time, so they'll have a job, they'll get a raise, they'll go here, they'll grow their business.
Yeah.
But there's ways you can grow it very quickly. I had a situation where I basically about 20x my net worth over 4 years, right? And so it was a very quick move, and
Yeah.
it happened because I was able to see myself at that next level. There's
Yeah.
a great book called 10x is easier than 2x. And
Yeah.
if you like minds, this is one of my favorite books on mindset. But he basically
Yeah.
says that. It's easier to go 10x and go much larger than it is to go 2x,
Yeah.
because 2x is just more of the same of what you're doing. So if I'm doing what I'm doing now, I'll just keep doing it. So I get to twice the size. But 10x, you've got to let go of 80% of what you were doing
Yeah.
and just focus on the 20%. And he talks about this guy who did it multiple times in a row in the financial world, said that he had the ability to do something a lot of these people do, is to rapidly accept a new identity.
Mm.
to
Interesting. Yeah.
rapidly accept a new identity because you and anybody listening, wherever you are, your income right now, if you 10x what you had, so if you're making 100,000, you at a million, you would have to be doing far less than what you're doing. You would have to let go of 80% of the things that you're doing.
Yep.
And that's been a challenge for me. I grew up, going to garage sales and thrift stores, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I've got to pay for a lot of things now. And it's hard to say, okay, well, my time is more valuable. I've got to like become this person in this way. So I think that the worthiness side is really it's that process of creating a bigger future
Yeah.
and going 10x rather than just a incremental 2x type improvement.
Yeah. No, I love that. Dan Sullivan, great. He's got a ton of great books out there. Did Ben Hardy write that with him? I'm trying to
He
remember.
co-wrote it. Yeah, they
Yeah,
co-wrote
yeah,
it
yeah.
together.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to get Ben on the show. He lives right down the road in
Oh,
South Carolina, I believe. So he's got some great stuff out there.
yeah.
But no, I love what you said. And I want to paraphrase some things and then I want to transition into more of the how as we wrap up here today. But yeah, you got to get your mindset right. And then I think, as you mentioned, surrounding yourself with the right people. You talked about your masterminds, the coaching, reading the right books, understanding that there's other people out there doing these things and learning how to do them. You've had the benefit of talking to 2,500 people as you wrote your new book. But then also being able to change, to rapidly accept that. So, if you're an athlete and a coach says, hey, you need to, change your stride or your stroke or whatever it might be. If you're not willing to do that, like Tiger Woods did, you're not going to be able to get to that next level. So I think those are some amazing tips that you provided there, Bronson.
Thanks, man. No, I think it's
Yeah.
huge. Just, big changes start with incremental things, and it's
Yeah.
just a daily focus of doing a little bit each day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think if you're listening, you realize how important that Bronson, I feel the mindset is to this. But let's wrap up with the how, Bronson. How did you do it? What types of real estate? What do you have going on right now? And how can the listeners find more out about that?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I started with single family. It wasn't moving as quick as I wanted, so I learned about
Yeah,
raising capital. They say it takes make money. It doesn't have to be your money. It can be other people's money. So that's kind of what I did, and also invested my own money. So we started with multifamily. Did a bunch of things in multifamily. We also shifted the last couple of years to do car washes and ATMs. And oil and gas and other private businesses. And so right now we're doing some of those. We're doing some oil and gas. We're doing some we took a little break from multifamily, we're back to multifamily now, and then we're actually in the process of buying a large e-commerce business that's very high cash flow. So,
sweet.
but how people can reach out, you can go to my website, bronsonequity.com. I do have a free guide for your listeners, which is about inflation. A lot of us, they say
Love it.
inflation is only 3% or whatnot, but know with a high degree of certainty that there will continue to be inflation, and there's ways you can actually use that to your advantage, so you don't see the pain at the pump or just see it at the store. You can on the other side of the equation where it actually benefits you through things like real estate or using debt or even some creative strategies through precious metals and just some unique things. So that's if you text the word inflation to the number 33777. So
Three
inflation to
three seven seven
33777.
seven. Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll send you a free copy of that to how to use inflation to your advantage.
Terrific. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. And when can we get your new book, Bronson?
Yeah, well, I've written most of it. I finished the whole thing, and I was like, oh, I forgot to write chapter 7 on habits. So I went back to go write on habits, and it's fun when you write something, you just you have to get your head around it again until
Yeah.
get you thinking about it. But I'm hoping within the next, the first half of 25.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we're excited. Check out Fire Yourself by Bronson Hill. Can listeners get that on your website?
Yeah, you can get it actually at Amazon. You can Amazon,
Perfect.
Fire Yourself, became a bestseller. But yeah, I'd love to share that with people too.
Yeah, grab that and then look out for Rich Brain. And you too, if you're listening, can benefit from not only the wisdom that Bronson shared today, but the wisdom that he learned from 2,500 others as he had those conversations. And you also got a great podcast out, Bronson, that I'll be on upcoming.
Yeah. You'll be seeing the Mailbox Money Show. We'll have you on there. I'm excited, man. So,
Me too. Me too. Well, Bronson, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, how listeners can change their mindset to reach the next level of success like you did today.
Thanks so much, Chris. Pleasure.
Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.